thank you so much for having me here today. And as Liam said, I'll be talking about the art and science of PRing yourself. So let's jump right in, and we're going to do some polls here. So how would we rate personal branding? Okay, so we think it's okay or pretty good, and an intentional focus sometimes on putting our PR skills towards this. All right, so that's good then. We're ahead of kind of where we want to be. So I think hopefully again we'll go through in this presentation some other thoughts where I can do this more effectively. But basically, I want to start off by just emphasizing that relationships and reputation are really at the core and at the heart of what public relations is all about, right? Um, but those are the same things that are also at the core of PRing yourself or promoting or publicizing yourself, your personal brand, and your achievements. And that requires really a blend of art and science to build your personal brand. And I'm using the terms art and science intentionally because I work, as Liam mentioned, at the Estee Lauder Companies, which is a global prestige beauty powerhouse of brands, right? So you can see some of the brands in our portfolio. And across the company, we have our R&D teams and innovation teams who I work really closely with, who are more on that technical side, right? And they're doing the science part of everything, making the formulas that are super impactful and deliver the best results. But then we have the other side of it, which is the creative side. All of the marketers, all of those in product development who are coming up with the way to describe the products and to talk about the products and to position them and the look, the feel. So these pieces need to come together in order to sell the product. And in the same way, you need to apply the art and science, maybe the tangible, and then what's a little bit more abstract, right, to create your own brand. And just because I work for the Estee Lauder companies doesn't mean that that is my brand, right? Though I would say that my 3-year-old probably would beg to differ. This is this is a picture from last week when school got out early and my daughter decided to join me on a Zoom call using some Bobbi Brown lipstick, right? So she likes to say that my husband, who's a surgeon, helps people and mommy makes lipstick. So to her, that's my personal brand, but I think my brand is more than that. And that's what I'm here to talk with you about today, is how you can build your own personal brand. Um, I also want to preface that I am not a personal branding expert. So then why am I here to talk to you today? Well, part of that is because my personal brand that I've developed in and out of the workplace has really been about being a connector. So my friends and family and colleagues always are telling me that that's something that I'm really good at. And you heard the conversation earlier in the last presentation about sometimes it depends on other people to tell you what you're good at that you might not even realize. So this is something I've learned over the past few years, that it's something that comes naturally to me, is connecting the dots on ideas or on people and interests. And I love to, it's more than just networking, but it's really being able to, again, make connections. So with this in mind, I'm using my own personal brand of being a connector to shape what I'm sharing with you today. So I've tapped into my own network for tips on how you all can, one, strengthen your LinkedIn profile, two, maximize your presence on LinkedIn, and then three, position yourself on your resume. So you'll see some headshots at the bottom of this slide from some folks that that I've never met in person. As Liam said, we met online, right? So some of these folks I've met via LinkedIn interactions, recruiters that have reached out to me. But then there's other people that I work with at the Estee Lauder companies, and then people that I know particularly well, including my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law on here. But what all of these people have in common, first of all, they're all members of my network. And second of all, they're all, with the exception of maybe one, they're all in the communication space or in the HR space, right? So I'm looking at people who have expertise in personal branding to help shape what I can tell you today. So first, let's start off with strengthening your LinkedIn profile. Um, so your LinkedIn profile, hopefully you already have one. It is your professional landing page where you can manage your personal brand. I'd say in the past, that likely was your resume, but now the resume and LinkedIn work hand in hand, and most people are probably going to Google you first and pull up your LinkedIn page. So you want that to be the place that shows who you are, what you stand for, and what you're interested in. And this is how LinkedIn describes what your profile actually is. So, what percentage of recruiters do you think use LinkedIn to find job candidates? Let's put up another poll here. So there is a correct answer. Yes, the correct answer is 95%, according to a recent article in Forbes. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this is closer to 100%, right? Like, I think recruiters are really using this as a tool that they really depend on to find the right candidates on a daily basis. I don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone. Um, so it's really critical that your LinkedIn profile enables you to make your best first impression, rather. Uh, and you'll see throughout the presentation, I'm including quotes again from my network. But Amanda is someone that I work closely with at the Estee Lauder companies. And when speaking with her about this, she was emphasizing just that there's the big things and the small things on your LinkedIn that can make a difference. And we have already talked about your headshot, but that's one area that is something that, again, you want to make sure you're giving the best first impression. You should have a professional photo. It shouldn't be from a night out in college or anything like that. This is something that for me, even personally, I last year decided to invest in a new headshot, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Found a studio in the city. Given that I work in beauty, it was important to have my makeup done right. Went to Sephora, got my makeup done, did all that. And I was able to feel like I was investing in myself to give myself a new headshot to present myself online, right? Beyond the photo, obviously think about how you want to present yourself and what you want people to know about you. Um, sorry. So ensuring your profile is complete is another really maybe obvious but important part of this. I think since LinkedIn has continued to evolve and you can add all different sections, again, once you decide what you want to show about yourself, but it's important that you have a lot filled out and that people can go there to get the information they need about you as a potential applicant. So the headline is something that several of my HR contacts flagged to me as something that's really important to be more eye-catching. A lot of times people who are more established in their field might have their job title as their headline. But I've heard from several HR contacts that it's really important to have something that's a little catchier. In this instance, I'd say the contact that was saying it has her headline there, but that's because she's in talent acquisition herself, and that's a big part of her actual brand, needing to connect with candidates, right? But if you're a student, it's fine to be putting in the headline what you're seeking. You're seeking a job focused on X, Y, and Z. You're a PR student focused on, you're someone who has proven PR internship experience. It should be really tight though, because you can go to the other sections like the about and experience where you can really describe what you're all about. The about section is an area where I've heard that HR thinks that communications students can really showcase their writing expertise too, or their creativity, since it allows a little bit more flexibility than just the sections beneath where you have kind of what your job responsibilities are in each position. And you don't really have to put pressure on yourself that, again, as a student, you might not have as much experience as you might like, but there's room to include extracurricular activities, volunteer activities, which we'll get into later. But you can also, again, include what you're looking to get into. It's an opportunity for you to put yourself forward and put out what you want the world to see. Another really important topic with your LinkedIn profile when you're building it is to think about the skills that you're outlining. So there's a section on LinkedIn where you can tag specific skills. And the recruiters that I spoke to were really emphasizing to me that when they're conducting searches for specific jobs, that's a really critical part of their kind of search on their end, right? So if they're searching for media relations or for um, internal communications, etc., those are the terms that they're going to put in there, and those skills are what will enable you to pop up as a candidate aligned with that. So don't underestimate the importance of putting those skills. Of course, they should be skills that you have. There's not an opportunity to really put how proficient you are in those different skills, but if it's something that you have familiarity with, whether it's something you've taken a course on or things you've done in your internships, I would lean on the side of putting those skills so that you can be discovered, for lack of a better word. So the skills, what skills will the company need you as a PR practitioner to focus on in the next 5 years? This was a survey done by Muck Rack, which is a database for media context and journalists. I thought this was just interesting to share that strategic planning shows up as one, integrating AI tools, media relations, and data analytics. These are kind of some of the most important tools that people have selected who filled out this survey. There's, of course, all these other ones that you can see, like written communications, verbal communications, that are all important. But I thought this is just helpful for you to be aware of what others in the PR space are saying are the skills that are important to be successful. There was also another study done by NYU that showed students thinking that the most important professional skills would be storytelling, client management, integrated communication, integrated marketing, rather, mainstream media relations, etc. So there's a wide variety of skills that are important in public relations and communications, but these are the kind of things that you want to be thinking about. Along this same lines as the skills being important, the keywords are also absolutely critical. I think this goes back to just the same with if you're managing a brand or working with a client in-house or at an agency, search engine optimization online is really important. It's the same for your personal brand and your profile. If I'm telling you that my brand is about connections and connecting people, that should come across clearly on my profile and should be something that when someone is searching for me, they can find that. So again, recruiters were mentioning to me, you should integrate those keywords, for example, that you're seeing in a job description that you're applying for, to make your profile stand out. And the more specific that you can get, the better. Something else that I've heard is that, HR professionals can't be experts in every single field, right? So someone that's recruiting for communications might also be recruiting for R&D or other areas. So they might not be as familiar with the ins and outs of various social media monitoring tools or, other nuances that might be more obvious to a public relations professional or student. So make sure that you're having those words included in there, because that's what HR is going to rely on when they're looking to find potential candidates. So this one is just a question I wanted to put out there that actually has raised a little bit of debate in my own conversations within my network. So what are your thoughts on if you should showcase your full self on LinkedIn and your resume? See what you all think. All right, so we're split 50-50. And that actually is what I was hoping for, because that's what my network seemed to be split on too. It was interesting. I was talking to my mother-in-law last week, who my mother-in-law has had a long career as an HR professional. She's now retired, but she still works with SHRM, the Society for Human Resources. And she said, absolutely not. You should not show your full self on your LinkedIn and your resume. And her perspective was, if it's not related to work, you should not be showing it. And I pushed back on her and I was saying, well, but there's things that I do outside the office that I think, help with my public speaking or that, etc. And her pushback was partially related to unconscious bias, and that you don't want to give people a reason to not consider you for a role because of something that you're doing outside the office that might have a specific response for them, right? So right after that conversation, I spoke with another HR professional who works with me at the Stillwater companies, and I asked her the same question. And from her perspective, she was saying, yes, you should show your full self or whatever you're comfortable sharing, because she said the last thing that you want is to be only showing a portion of yourself when you're interviewing and then getting a job and showing up and finding that your full self is not welcome. So I think this goes to I think what this says to me is that there's going to be mixed feelings across HR. There's probably going to be mixed feelings across applicants and those of us in communications on what you are comfortable um, sharing or what is appropriate, I guess. The fact is, I think that you have to do whatever you're most comfortable with. And it goes back to authenticity, which is something we discussed before. So be your authentic self. And I personally think it's okay to show your full self. And I think that you can come off um, maybe more memorable or stronger if you really are just leaning into who you are. But again, just be aware that biases do exist. And you never know what's going to work in your favor or against you. And it's kind of a risk that, you have to be willing to take or to accept. So, shifting into the next topic, let's talk a bit about how you can maximize your presence on LinkedIn. So, we have I was going to say static page, but really it shouldn't be static because your profile, you can update your profile over time as things change, as you gain new experience, as you hear from others about, what's been working well on their profiles, right? That's your profile. Now there's how do you engage on the actual platform on a day-to-day basis on LinkedIn. So according to PR Daily, when it comes to working with brands or companies, the best social strategy has a mix of content that keeps your audience in mind, not an algorithm. So it's easy to try to think, okay, what's the perfect combination of the time of day to post and how many images to post and etc. in order to get the best results, right? But when you're working with a company or a brand, the best social strategy, again, is focusing on your audience and not trying to just figure out that perfect algorithm. It goes back to this idea of this combination of art and science. So I'd encourage you to think about yourself as your own brand and think about your audience and your mix of content. And again, don't try to be so exact as a science, but what feels authentic to you, what seems like it will resonate with your audience. 50% of PR professionals say that LinkedIn is the most important social media platform for them. It probably is most important for them because of both their day jobs and then also just to have their own presence and building their own brand. So this just shows LinkedIn remains a really important tool, as we were talking about earlier, to establish yourself and to be having real engagement and connections on a day-to-day basis. In order to build those connections, you really need to start establishing a network, who you're connected with on LinkedIn. And some of those people will be people that you know who are in your classes in school, your professors, people you've done internships with. And others might be ones you don't know who are potentially alums from your school or friends of a friend, etc. So along those lines, don't underestimate the power of alumni connections. And I know many of you are in New Jersey, so Charmaine is a proud Rutgers alum. So she and her son, I believe, goes to Rutgers as well. So she was talking to me about, a brand like Rutgers, but also other big colleges or other universities with brands have really active alumni networks. And you shouldn't underestimate the power of that. You should lean into those alums, reach out to people one-on-one for informational conversations, advice, or to connect. If you don't have strong alumni connections, that's not the only thing that you need to lean on. So this is some advice from my brother-in-law. He's amazing at using LinkedIn to make connections and help others. He's always making introductions, and he meets a lot of people at different conferences and events. But he suggests also to follow thought leaders and different industry organizations to help grow relationships and stay up to date on different insights. So on LinkedIn, it's not just about posting your own content, but engaging with others' content. So how often do you personally post or comment on LinkedIn? This is another poll for you. All right, so we have a mix here of not often, less than once a month or a few times a week, right? So in terms of how often you actually should post, this was a snapshot from me, I think, like last week when I was having a slower week and I hadn't done anything. So you could see on LinkedIn, there's all these metrics where it shows you what they suggest doing. So it says they suggest taking 3 actions every week, and that includes posting, commenting, contributing in any way. So last week I didn't do anything. This week I'd say I was probably um I was going to say too active, but I don't know if there is a such thing as too active, right? I probably posted once a day this week just since there was a lot going on. It's okay if it's not the same every week, but I think that I did hear from several folks that I spoke to that consistency is really important in building your brand. So engaging and liking posts is helpful just to keep the momentum going, even when you don't have something that you want to be posting on your own. A piece of advice that I that someone else in my network had shared is about engaging genuinely with others' content and building real connections. So don't just network, but cultivate these relationships through meaningful interactions. So that could be anything from sharing perspectives back and forth on articles or doing someone a favor when someone reaches out asking for advice or asking for an introduction somewhere. Try to be authentic, because even this is the founder of a handle called the PR Girl Manifesto, which I'd encourage you to follow if you're not already. But we've never met in person, but we've engaged several times on LinkedIn. She's promoted job opportunities that I've had on my team, and she's also now contributing to this presentation. There's things that people kind of do to help each other out, just from forming connections on LinkedIn. Another communications professional in my network had emphasized that if you're not ready to share, again, engage with other people's content. You can like things, commenting it on it, and people notice. He had mentioned to me he notices like certain people that he might not know again personally, but he knows they're always liking his things and always commenting and engaging. So it's something that can help you stand out when you're engaging on LinkedIn. When you do have something that you have seen, whether it's an interesting news article or whether you have a perspective or have reached an exciting milestone in your career or education, for example, then you should definitely feel free to share those perspectives and resources on your channel with your network. So Tony's a great example of, I think I mentioned earlier that there was one person in here that's not a communications professional. He actually studied physics, I believe, but I went to Cornell and so did he, and his whole brand is about Cornell. So when I think of him, he's built an amazing brand online. He's looking to connect with Cornellians, connect about Cornell. That's his brand. And he's the one that emphasized to me that consistency is really important. And he's looking to post multiple times a week for over 4 years and posts about consistent themes like events and news and updates. And that's why he comes to mind to me as someone that just like personifies Cornell. I think you want people to think of you when they think about a certain topic. And that's why consistency is helpful from that perspective. So again, regular posting keeps you visible, keeps you relevant. I mentioned before highlighting milestones or achievements. You can also highlight when you have lessons learned, or showcase your expertise. Use it as a moment to share, projects that you worked on in school, or efforts that you did during an internship, or even just behind the scenes of kind of your life as a PR student or professional, et cetera. So there's different ways to give glimpses into who you are. And again, feeling wherever you feel most comfortable when it comes to the intersection of your personal and your professional life. We already discussed sharing news and everything, but if you when you're sharing all of this information that's helpful to your audience, like we mentioned at the beginning, when you have your audience in mind and not the algorithm, then you're essentially elevating your position on the platform, which will in turn help build your personal brand. So authenticity is something we've already been talking about a bit, but I can't emphasize enough that you should focus on being authentic, doing what feels authentic to you, but showing who you are and your perspective. One of the great pieces of advice that my contact Mike had shared was he kept phrasing it as don't get ahead of your skis, right? He was saying you should start small, and he was emphasizing the importance of connecting just at a human level. His brand is authenticity, is what he told me. So I've intentionally left his quote saying to connect at a human level beyond the well, actually, sorry, beyond the transactional business BS, right? So he wants, that's part of his brand. So he's saying be human, approach this as the same way as networking. Don't just reach out when you're asking for something. Again, just be a human on LinkedIn. Another former colleague of mine is one of the only people in my network that I personally know that was named to the Forbes 30 under 30 list. So Paul has done a great job kind of posting about herself online. And she was emphasizing just that PR people aren't always the best at um, PRing themselves, and that they need to find ways to celebrate themselves and their accomplishments. Since a lot of times we really are just so focused on using our PR skills to promote the brands and the leaders and others that we are working with that we forget to do this for ourselves. I know at the start of this presentation, I asked how many of you are intentionally focusing on using your PR skills to do the same for yourself. It really takes conscious effort, and some of us are better than that at others. I've personally been trying to put more of a focus on it now, and it takes practice and effort, but once you get into a rhythm of it, um, you can find what's authentic to you, that you're, again, doing things that aren't just for the sake of it, but because you want to share your perspectives, you want to connect with others in your network, and in turn, it still, again, benefits you in the long run. So also on LinkedIn, don't be afraid of direct messages. The functionality is there for a reason. I think that it's helpful sometimes to share things broadly to a group, but it's also helpful to be able to connect one-on-one with, whether it's making introductions for people, or asking people, oh, I see you're connected to so-and-so, would you mind introducing me? I'm interested in an internship there. Reaching out to an alum saying, I've been looking at your career path, would love to have an informational conversation, things along those lines. So one of my former colleagues from Edelman, actually, she was working in public relations and transitioned to a career in HR. She shared some great advice that you should really approach conversations with curiosity, be genuine and humble. So think about why you actually want to connect with someone before reaching out, and think about what you're hoping to achieve and put out in the world. Focus on putting yourself out there in the way you want to be perceived. The other thing is that the worst thing that happens is someone doesn't respond. And I mean, I'm guilty of sometimes not responding to things because life just gets crazy or work gets crazy. But I thought this was an interesting perspective that, a busy HR professional that I work with said that she really feels a responsibility to respond when she gets these messages. And she was, she's an HR professional, but also a mom. And she was saying to her, it's really important to respond because she's telling her kids to be reaching out to people, and she tells candidates at career fairs to reach out directly. So you never know what that message will result in. It's not going to necessarily result in a job, but it can result in someone pointing you to a job opening, or connecting you with a hiring manager or recruiter, or giving you any piece of advice. So just be open and put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to reach out. So now let's transition just to the last topic, of positioning yourself on your resume. So I mentioned earlier that LinkedIn and your resume are closely interconnected. A lot of times your resume will have your LinkedIn profile on the top, and recruiters will go between the two. But they do have different uses, and they should look and feel different than each other. Again, I'm not an expert on resumes. I've been at the same company for over 10 years. So, um, I'm not out and about updating my resume, but I've gotten some great insights from HR professionals that should hopefully help you all. So, a resume, according to Indeed, an online search platform, the resume is a page or two where you have your skills. They help you get your first interview. That's the intention of them. So, if that's the goal, we have to think about what you put on your resume and how you structure it so that you can get that interview, which we'll talk about interviewing later. But this is kind of now the intermediary step. So you have 7 seconds apparently to get a recruiter's attention with your resume. Um, I've never read this book in full transparency, but when doing some research, I came across this and read about it on Glassdoor. But that's not a lot of time, right? So you really need to think about how you're going to attract attention. And one of the ways to do that, or a main way to do that on your resume, and this also it applies to LinkedIn, is to PR your experiences. So there's things that you are doing on a day-to-day basis that you might not realize are impactful. And it's important to think about, again, what are you doing that helps with the bigger picture? Even if it's on a school project, like what is the area that you contributed that leads to the bigger result? There's a need to balance being factual and embellishing or exaggerating. When you PR something, obviously I'm not saying that in a negative way of spinning it or anything like that, but you don't need to be so literal saying you know, wrote X, Y, and Z pitch emails. It's, you know, I helped amplify X, Y, and Z's reputation by drafting these pitch letters. If you're doing that in an internship, for example, you should be clear though about the specific role that you play to contribute to the team's success. Because the last thing that you want is for someone to seem like you have a lot more experience in something than you do. And then when they double down on that in an interview, you being kind of caught without having much to say. Another important tip for your resume is that you should be tailoring your resume to the job. So you can have your standard resume. I mean, I remember, 15 years ago now, I guess, when I was graduating from college, that I had a few different versions of my resume, one for the agency jobs I was applying for, others for maybe more PR versus marketing, etc. You can have those, but then you can also really tailor for the job, since it goes back to those same tips that we were saying before about keywords and skills. You want to make it clear why you have some of those experiences that are relevant to the job. So 67% of job seekers actually tailor their resume to a specific job. And your resume should be a living and breathing document, right? So you can adapt it as needed for the role that you're interested in, and as your areas of expertise change. But investing that time will help you hopefully land the job that you're looking for. You should also give thought to format and how you're going to present yourself on that 1 to 2 page resume. Actually, just on that note, while I think of it, since most of you are students, at this point, your resume should likely just be 1 page, since you probably don't have extensive experience. As you get a little bit more, it's fine to make it, closer to 2. So would you consider your resume today a traditional or creative style? This is another poll question. All right, so we have 67% saying traditional, 33% saying blend. So this is a topic I was interested in because, again, I feel like things have changed over the past 15 years that I've been out of school. But I read this interesting article on CNBC about, you can see in the headlines, selfies, emojis, rainbows of color. So recruitment experts sharing what are their thoughts on creative resumes. And basically the takeaway that, well, the takeaway that this article had was that there's not one right resume. And I think that's actually what one of my colleagues said too. She said there's no one right resume, but there are absolutely wrong ones. So you don't just want your resume to stand out because there's emojis and colors and this and that, right? You want it to stand out for your accomplishments. Um, so sorry, just going back to that. I have heard recently, and I don't know that I added this into the presentation, but someone told me about a social media influencer, I'll need to find the name, who posts a lot of different resume formats. And they were sharing that a lot of really successful candidates have more of the traditional resume kind of on the left, and then have the call out bar, like column on the right side that might have bulleted out some of your key skills or like some key takeaways. And that's apparently been proven as an effective format to glance to. One thing I do want to call out is that with some of the applicant systems, the applicant management systems or resume databases that companies use, it's my understanding that if your resume is too creative or uses a different like table format or things, the system might not be able to like read it and pull out all of the keywords and things like that. So there's things, technical elements to consider. Again, going back to that art and science, you can think through your headline on your resume, the size of your name, the bulleting, the consistency with the punctuation. Those are all parts of the format too. It's not just, again, there's nothing wrong with having a traditional style resume, but making sure that it is visually pleasing and that it's very clear and clean and easy to interpret. Another item that actually only one HR professional I spoke with brought up, but I thought it was really interesting, was the cover letter. So she was saying that some people view the cover letter as outdated, but that she really relies on it to help learn more about a candidate and help set them apart. So especially as someone who might be really passionate about writing, you're able to express yourself a bit more creatively in your cover letter and showcase your passion and your expertise, show and tell in the cover letter. So obviously that takes more time, and maybe you're only going to be able to reserve that for the jobs that you're really focused on. But again, don't underestimate the importance of the cover letter there. Now, this is something that I need to underscore. So do not forget to proof your resume. I can't tell you how many times as a hiring manager, I've seen resumes for communication jobs that just have, again, things that might seem minor, like inconsistent punctuation or capitalization, or the bullet is a different size or things like that. But I notice that because in my day-to-day job, that's important for delivering the best to my internal clients, or when I was on the agency side to my external clients. So really don't forget to proof. Make sure that you're not just depending on spell check and grammar check. Read it, make sure that there's that you don't have errors, because again, you want to make your best first impression, and that can really backfire, I guess, especially for a communication job. 58% of employers say they dismiss a resume if it has typos or grammatical errors. I would argue that for the communication industry, it should be closer to 100% of employers or hiring managers, because again, it's just part of our job. So before we open up to questions, I guess I want to close by just saying that your personal brand can and should evolve over time, whether it's both on LinkedIn and on your resume, because your experiences inherently are going to change over time, but you'll discover things about yourself, what you want to lean into based on feedback you receive, based on things that you realize differentiate you from others, based on a position you're trying to secure, etc. So it's okay for your personal brand to evolve. Again, brands, personalities evolve. And again, you as an individual, it can evolve. I also want to now emphasize that I've taken a little bit of a meta approach. I couldn't think of that word. It was really bothering me, but it's meta, right? I've been showing you this whole time the art and science of PRing yourself in action, actually, by doing this presentation. So case in point, Liam mentioned earlier, we don't know each other in person, right? So I actually saw on LinkedIn that he was organizing this talk. I was connected with Catherine since we both went to Cornell, even though we personally didn't know each other either. We connected on LinkedIn, talked. I got invited to join this presentation. I'm talking with you all today. Then internally at my company, before I go speak externally, I need to submit a form, which inherently positions me a certain way internally as someone who's invested in, again, representing my company and representing myself. So people at work knew that I was doing this, right? So that enhances my branding. Then I'm promoting the event online on my personal network. Then the approach that I took with putting together this presentation by leaning into my connections, it gave me an opportunity to reconnect with a lot of my colleagues from Edelman, my previous employer, people that I work with at the Estee Lauder companies, others on LinkedIn, others from my university. Some people that I work super closely with, like Charmaine, I work with her on a daily basis, but we work together in the office, and I realized we weren't even connected on LinkedIn, right? So I used this as an opportunity then to connect with some others who I wasn't connected with on LinkedIn. Some of the insights I shared with you today, I've started to apply to my own branding. I mentioned the title not being like my company not needing to be my own full personal brand, right? So I've done little things like I updated the headline on my profile based on some of these insights. The other thing that happened out of this is that, one of the contacts, Mike, that I spoke with, he invited me to be on his podcast as part of the conversation I was having with him. The PR Girl Manifesto, I mentioned that. She invited me to be part of her newsletter as part of this. And then Steve Barrett, who's the editor of PR Week, I had reached out to him and he accepted my invitation to connect on LinkedIn instead of me just following him. So these are some examples of kind of some small things, but I'm trying to show you intentionally that everything you do on LinkedIn can make a difference on your personal brand. And you should think of each opportunity that you have as a moment to brand yourself and be intentional. So again, just hopefully this is some inspiration that you can take into whatever phase of your journey that you're in personal branding. And I hope that you found this helpful.